千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we delve deeply into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Chapter 41 is much longer than chapter 40. In chapter 40, we only have 4 lines. In 41, we've got 23 lines. So this is quite a bit to go through. So I think it's going to take us another couple more meetings to get through it all. But I think as usual, you will find that there's a lot of food for thought. You will find that there's a lot of spiritual sustenance. So here's 41. It goes like this. Higher people hear of the Tao. They diligently practice it. Average people hear of the Tao. They sometimes keep it and sometimes lose it. Lower people hear of the Tao. They laugh loudly at it. If they do not laugh, it would not be the Tao. Therefore, a proverb has the following. The clear Tao appears unclear. The advancing Tao appears to retreat. The smooth Tao appears uneven. High virtue appears like a valley. Great integrity appears like disgrace. Encompassing virtue appears insufficient. Building virtue appears inactive. True substance appears inconstant. The great square has no corners. The great vessel is late in completion. The great music is imperceptible in sound. The great image has no form. The Tao is hidden and nameless, yet it is only the Tao that excels in giving and completing everything. That's quite a bit to absorb. It's quite a bit to digest. As usual, we can start out by looking at the Chinese characters and then analyze the repeating patterns. Then we can break it up into sections, and then we can explore each section separately, line by line. So looking at the first few lines, just focusing our attention at the top of the chapter, can you guys see the repeating patterns? Hence, it is an AB, AB, AB pattern. I think you should be able to see that lines 1, 3, and 5 contain repeating characters. If it's not really clear, take a look at the highlighting that I'm applying to this. Now, I think everyone can see that we have 3 repeating characters from 1, 3, and 5. So now we can identify from lines 1 to 5, that is at least a section. But there's more. Right below line 5, there's also 2 lines with repeating characters. That character there means laugh. So then looking at lines 5 and 6, we can see that they are actually together. is basically saying lower people hear of the Tao, they laugh loudly at it, and then the theme of laughing is carried on to line 7. So now we can tell that from 1 to 7, it is all one section. It's talking about the different ways that people react to the Tao. The higher people, the average people, the lower people, they react differently. And then the last one is about the laughing. So what about the section right below that? What may be the repeating characters there? Can anyone pick that out? There's one repeating character that is in the same position from line 9 all the way down to line 16. Can anyone see it? If it's too confusing because the characters are unfamiliar, then I'll turn on the highlighting and you can see where the character is repeating. Now, is that the only character that is repeating in that section right below the first section? There's actually more characters that repeat. And again, I'll highlight some of those. That character, if I can just point out, it is the character for the Tao, which I have for easy reference here at the upper right-hand corner. That's the character for the Tao. There's also another character that's repeating in the same position. That's the character De for virtue. So it is no accident that this book we're studying is 道德经. These are the first two characters in the name of the book. And now that we have seen the repeating characters in this entire section, that's a pretty solid case to make to identify that entire thing from line 8 down to line 16 as one section. And now you see the hidden structure of the Tao Te Ching. You see the different sections. So what about the last section? Any repeating characters there? You probably can pick that out on your own. And here they are. So the first character from line 17 down to line 20, same character. That is a character for great. Here again, we have repeating characters in this section that is not as apparent, but they're still around. Just looking at the 4 lines, you may think, well, perhaps I'll have one last division between line 20 and line 21. Well, if you look at the repeating characters here, it actually extends from that line 17 to 20 group into line 21. So we can make a pretty good case that from 17 all the way to the bottom, line 23 is the final section. That is the section 3, the concluding section. Excellent. So that is now the analysis for the hidden structure of this chapter. We have 3 sections. In a moment, we will begin our line-by-line analysis. Let's start doing the line-by-line analysis, starting from the first section. So the very first line, as you can see, is about higher people. Higher people hear of the Tao. Let's get into that a little deeper. I want to focus first on the very first character of line 1. 上. The meaning of that is above, upper, higher up. And then 士, the second character there, it means a person who is trained in certain fields. Someone who's had training and learning. In this context, which is all about the Dao De Jing, all about the Tao, this means someone who's trained in the Tao, aligned with the Tao, someone who is learning or studying the Tao. So when you put it together, 上士, you have someone who's studying the Tao at a higher level. But there's a little bit more to that. Let me explain. 士, the second character, sometimes is mistranslated as man. If you sample different translations, you will see this come up quite often. When 士is translated as a man, I can see the reason why the mistake occurs. Because in ancient Chinese history, it was usually men who had the public role. However, if we're talking about linguistics, 士, the character is actually gender neutral, and it has to be used with another character if you want to be specific about gender. Let me give you just a quick example, the most common example in Mandarin. 男士, two characters. 男 means male, 士 means person or plural, persons. So together, men, usually translated just as men, 男士. The complement is 女士, where the first character, 女, that's female. And it's kind of interesting how 女, the character, is almost a pictographic representation of a female. So female person or persons, plural, together, translated as ladies. So you see, 男士, 女士, it's just like ladies and gentlemen, but in Mandarin. Now you can use a little bit of logic here. If 男士 means men, 女士 means ladies, then it is 男, 女, the first character that gives it a gender. 士 is just person. This is an easy way to see that 士, the character, is actually gender neutral and it can apply to anyone. And this is how you can tell that a translator doesn't really know Mandarin and therefore translates it as man or men. So just a quick note on the accuracy of translation here, and it becomes more important as we talk about this. Let's bring the two characters together, 上士. Okay, so now we can tell this means an individual, and I like the word individual because the word individual is gender neutral. An individual at a higher level of understanding in the Tao. And when I say the Tao, I'm using that in the broadest, most general sense possible, because there are plenty of people out there who may not know what they learn and study as the Tao. They don't call it the Tao. They may just call it spirituality, or they call it a personal philosophy, or they just learn about life in general. That's totally fine. All of those are embedded in the meaning of the Tao. So someone who understands the Tao, what I mean by that is someone who is wise in living life. Whether that person is a practitioner of the Tao, that's really a secondary question, not even that important or interesting to me. So 上士 is someone who has a higher level of understanding of life. Think of it that way. So the characteristic of this person, this is an active student. Now, this person may be studying a formalized course. So for instance, all of you, just by virtue of listening to me, you belong to this category, 士. If this person who's actively studying but not in a course like this one, then that person may still be 士, may still fit the definition, except that this person would be studying from life, by observing life, by learning all about themselves through life experience. So then, I want to be very accurate about this. The utilization of higher, average, or mid-level, and then lower, it's important. When you talk about higher and lower levels, the implication, the clear implication, is that everybody's working through different levels. What level are you at right now? I don't know. You will be able to answer that question better for yourself. But if you are studying the Tao, you are working your way through some of the personal lessons that are applicable to you in life, and therefore you are climbing the ladder. You are going up higher. When you increase your understanding or wisdom about life, you find yourself at a higher level of learning or understanding about life itself. Does that make sense? It is definitely the case here that we're all learning, we're all hopefully advancing through life, working our way through levels of understanding. So it's important to talk about the higher and lower levels. Now, let me explain that, let me further delve into why this is so important to me. First of all, when we talk about levels, it's not something that stays the same all the time. Some people, including you and me, as we're talking about this now, we may be at a lower level today. We may not be where we want to be. But that doesn't mean those people at a lower level remain there forever. It's a dynamic quality. So it may take us quite a while, maybe years, maybe lifetimes. But sooner or later, everyone will be at a higher level. Everyone will hopefully learn from experience, learn the karmic lessons, and be a more refined spiritual entity. So in that sense, this is similar to the Buddhist concept of 佛性, Buddha nature. Buddha nature is a potential that exists in everyone to awaken and attain enlightenment. Everyone has it, just like everyone has the ability to attain a higher level of Tao understanding. We're talking about the same thing using different words. Now that you understand what the term really means, 上士, let's talk about what it doesn't mean. As you sample the different translations out there, you will sometimes come across 上士translated as superior man. Just by hearing me talk about the previous few slides, you can pinpoint why this is wrong. First of all, hopefully you can tell, it's not supposed to be man. It's supposed to be gender neutral, as much of Chinese expressions are. Secondly, superior. What do you mean by superior? So higher is superior? Well, superior, inferior, these are terms that don't quite fit the spirit of Lao Tzu's expression. The reason is, superior person, inferior person, you know there's a harsher nuance in judging the intrinsic quality of people and labeling them as such. When you point to someone as an inferior person, think about how that feels. Now, you can point to them and say that they are a beginner, they are a novice, they are still at the lower level of understanding, working their way up. That's totally fine. That's what Lao Tzu intended to express. But they are not inferior. They are not inferior as people. That was never the intended expression. So the translators who don't really know the subtle nuance of Mandarin and English will often make a mistake like this. And when they do, they lose the original intended meaning. And the original intended meaning is that the level of spiritual attainment is constantly changing, evolving, it's dynamic. And for everyone, I hope that the direction of change is ever progressing, ever upward, higher, better, more positive. Sometimes we do suffer a setback, but hopefully it's, one step back, 2 steps forward, and you keep on advancing. Okay, now we're ready to talk about the rest of it. When higher people hear of the Tao, what happens? Well, those who are aligned or in tune with the Tao will resonate powerfully when they come into contact with the Tao. And because I have met some of you in person, and I have known some of you for quite some time, for quite a few years now, I know that there's quite a few among us who fit this description, that you resonate powerfully when you come into contact with the Tao. And I also want to say that when I talk about this, I'm not limiting myself to just talking about the people who know about the Tao Te Ching. We're studying the Tao Te Ching right now, but there are people out there who are very wise, but don't know what the Tao Te Ching is. That's okay. This is covering everybody who has this intuitive wisdom about life. When they hear something that is true, it will resonate with them, just as it will with you. Furthermore, let me bring this up. Some had the experience that long time ago, maybe years ago, they had encountered the Tao previously. Maybe it was high school, maybe it was, as a younger person that they came across the Tao Te Ching. At the time, it meant nothing. It didn't make a big impact. But time went on. You gained life experience. Now, when you encounter the Tao, suddenly it's resonating with you like it never did before. It means a lot more than it did before. You see a lot more than you could see before. If you've had that experience, please go ahead and type something out at me. I definitely enjoy hearing about that. Now, moving on. So let's talk about what happens when higher people hear of the Tao. Line 2, they diligently practice it. So I want to make a few comments there as well. So a defining characteristic of those who are aligned or in tune with the Tao is that they understand the key to mastery is diligent practice. It's not even something that is up for debate. They don't question it. They just accept it as a universal truth or a principle to live by. They know action is always part of the authentic Tao. Good things in life happen as a result of thinking and doing. In the Tao and in reality, there's no spontaneous manifestation from wishing alone. That's why we call wishful thinking wishful thinking. There's a huge gap between wishful thinking and reality, a gap that is rarely, if ever, crossed. So this is fundamentally different from the idea that all you have to do is think positive to attract good things into your life. The idea that thinking can make a difference in your life is very attractive by itself. So that's what accounts for the popularity for the law of attraction. But even the law of attraction is powerless when all you do is think. On the other hand, the law of attraction works very well indeed when your thoughts lead you to action. So I'm not knocking the law of attraction. I'm just saying that when it does work, it's the Tao. When a hypothesis is proven in science, it goes from theory to a scientific fact. When the law of attraction is utilized with both thinking and actions, it goes from wishful thinking to the Tao. So conclusion, higher level Tao cultivators are not only highly aware, they resonate powerfully with the Tao, but they're also highly motivated. So both awareness and motivation are the hallmarks of high-level Tao cultivators. They're not just thinkers, they're also doers. So by that, I'm hoping to motivate everybody into taking action on some of the things that you have relegated to the realm of wishful thinking. Some of those wishes do not need to remain in the realm of wishful thinking. They can take on actual reality. So that is our discussion on 上士, the higher level of people, and what happens when they hear of the Tao. Let's talk about the mid-level. So the mid-level people, 中士, mid-level students of the Tao. And just as a reminder, when I say students, I'm not necessarily talking about people who are formally enrolled in a course. I'm talking about also students of life. And this is where many people are. They have their moments, but they're not consistently aware of motivated. The difference between 中士 and 上士 is the level of consistency in awareness and motivation. So for the mid-level students of the Tao or of life, they can be full of enthusiasm when they start working on something, but after a while, they will lose interest and drift away. So any number of times I have seen people sign up, as an example, for gym membership, but after a few months, they stop going. That's it right there. We have also seen examples in those who gain and lose weight repeatedly through the yo-yo dieting that they put themselves through. And that may describe some people you know. There's also people who often say, this time it will be different. And often I hear this in the context of New Year resolution. They say this time it will be different because every year previous to that, it has not been different. They start with a New Year resolution, several months into it, they drift off into something else. So the graphic that I used to represent the higher level Tao cultivators was an image of the Buddha. For the mid-level students of the Tao, I would actually use this image of a crowd because, wow, there are so many people out there who fit in this description. They're sometimes there, sometimes not. Sometimes motivated, sometimes apathetic. Sometimes energized, sometimes indifferent. They have trouble maintaining a consistent level of energy. And that remains a great challenge for many people today. So let's talk about the way that they react and we go to line 4. In line 4, we have this expression, translates to they sometimes keep it, sometimes lose it. So I want to single out the repeating characters there, 若. The meaning is as if, seems like, similar to. So when we put the whole thing together, we can literally transcribe it as sequentially, as if existing, as if dead. And the meaning of that is that sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. It means failing to keep up with the practice. When you have the practice, when it's alive and well, it exists in your life. And sometimes you forget all about it, or, I'm too busy. I can't do it today. So it's gone from your life. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's alive and well, sometimes it's dead. So that's what the expression means. And this is typical of the mid-level students of the Tao or mid-level students of life. And this describes a lot of people. Let's talk about the lower level of students, the beginners, the novice. And one characteristic of the lower level is that they don't see themselves as the lower level. So first, let's break down the two characters. We'll start with the first one, the first character in line 5, 下. Whenever you have X in the romanization, think of it as SH, 下. So the meaning of this character is below, lower, or down. So 下士, the lower people, they are the ones least familiar and most resistant to the Tao. They also tend to be close-minded, which means they won't listen. Even if you had something of value to impart to them, they're not ready to listen to you. They're not open-minded enough to hear what you have to say. So it is very likely that you have seen such people in your life. You know what I'm talking about? The cynical, sarcastic, dismissive, and arrogant people in your life. Now, you can tell on top of the slide in line 6 and 7, Laozi describes these people as laughing loudly. So I'm using an emoticon to represent them that is anything but laughing loudly. This is the opposite of someone laughing loudly. That is because the laughing, in this case, is not a sign of happiness. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the laughing loudly. So the two characters, 大笑. Let me break them down for you. First character, 大, means big, large, huge, vast. Second character, 笑, means laugh. And by the way, just like in English, some Chinese characters, some Mandarin characters can be translated in more than one way. They have multiple definitions. Some can be only translated one way. So when I use 大, I said big, large, vast, huge, etc. Those are the many different ways to translate the character 大. They're all synonymous or closely related. But 笑, it's really just one choice, laugh. That's it. So 大笑, let's take a look. Literally, big laugh, translated as laughing loudly. And as I remarked, laughter in this case, not an expression of joy, not an expression of happiness. It's manifestation of two possible states. Number one is ignorance. Laughing loudly at it because a new idea may be so beyond the comfort zone. that it is automatically seen as ridiculous. Sort of like, well, I don't get it, so it must be false. So it may just be a manifestation of ignorance rather than joy of happiness. Number two, it may be mockery. Standard tactic for bullies, and usually it's in an attempt to elevate oneself by putting other people down or ideas down, putting something down or someone down. Either way, laughing in this case has nothing to do with being happy. So the further remark from Lao Tzu about that is line 7, if they do not laugh, it will not be the Tao. So the ancient sages had, of course, plenty of experience observing how different people react to the Tao. Some people react well, some people ignore, some people reject, criticize. So they could see the reaction from naysayers, and they could detect that there was a pattern to it. I mean, we see this even in our world today. You know, the angriest people that we have seen, well, they may actually find detrimental ideas, that are not to their best interest. They may actually accept those ideas and embrace those ideas, support those ideas. Actual wisdom, ideas that would actually help them, they may reject or criticize those ideas. It forms a pattern. Because of that, ancient sages found, hey, it's that way all the time. It's predictable. It is so predictable that ignorant laughter, we can actually use it to gauge the quality and accuracy of Tao teachings. If they did not laugh about it, then, well, it may be not the best Tao teaching. If they did laugh, if they did make fun of it, you may be on the right track. You may have something there. So this is the concluding line about the 下士, the lower level of people. And I thought that it might be very helpful for us to set the 3 levels of people side by side and look at the way they react to the Tao and the way they live their lives on a day-to-day basis. That, I think, will make it really clear, who they are, how they are. It will also be very helpful for all of us to look at the differences and see where you and I fit in. That's going to be a question that I ask everybody. Where do you fit in on the different levels? So here's the comparison of the 3 levels. And again, I'm using image of the Buddha, crowds, and the angry emoji as representations of the 3 levels, the high level, the mid level, and the low level. So when hearing about the Tao, high level people resonate powerfully. So the reaction is likely to be, wow, that is so true. That is so well said. Hopefully, you find yourself having this reaction when you hear of the authentic Tao. What about mid-level people? Not the same reaction. When they hear about the Tao, interesting. I'll think about it. Or sometimes it's, interesting. I'll have to think about it. Or they'll say, I'll meditate on it. So there's not the same level of powerfully resonating in the heart, identifying with something, recognizing a great truth. And then what about low level? How do they react when they hear about the Tao? It may be, what? That is ridiculous. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. What is this nonsense? And that leads to the laughter, the mockery, and so on. So then, this is drawn from the first few lines of this chapter. I want to explore a little bit further, like what about the actions that they take upon encountering the Tao? The high-level person, their subsequent action is going to be diligent practice. This is also from the first part of chapter 41. The mid-level people, as you have read, it's on and off. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. They'll pick it up for a while and then they drop it off, and they'll go on to do something else. And then the low-level people, mockery, rejection, ridicule. That is their reaction. Hence, laugh loudly at the Tao. Now, probing a little bit further, the level of motivation that I talked about before can be quite different. As I mentioned, for the high level, they're self-starters. You don't have to tell them what to do, what they should do, and how to go about it. They're self-starters. They will get going on their own. That's a characteristic of the high-level person. The mid-level person is a little different. They will get started if you tell them to. Hey, don't you think it's time for you to get going on that particular practice? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do it. I'll start now, or I'll start today, or I'll start tomorrow. Either way, the characteristic is that the mid-level students will get going if someone nudges them in that direction, rather than just completely automatic and independent on their own. So what about the low level? Well, the low-level person refuses to budge. What? No, that's ridiculous. No, why would I do that? No, you're kidding, right? No, not in 1,000 years, and so on. Next, I want to talk about the spiritual practice among the three levels, the goal of the spiritual practice, how much do they understand about their spiritual practice is reflected in what they're trying to accomplish with the spiritual practice. See which one of these applies to you better. For the high-level person, that person understands that spiritual practice, the goal is to cultivate the true self. When I talk about the true self, I'm not talking about your body. I'm not talking about your reputation, your bank account. All of those are external to you. I'm not even talking about your name. I'm not even talking about your thoughts. I'm not talking about anything that will change. The true self is the you that never changes, no matter what else about you changes. That's what we cultivate. How about the mid-level person? Well, when the mid-level person engages in spiritual pursuits, spiritual practice, usually, and this is typical, see, we have the picture of the crowds below. This is what many people do. Pray for protection. Pray for divine favors. And from the perspective of the Tao, those kinds of prayers are not that much different from wishful thinking. It is only when wishful thinking is combined with action that you start to see a difference in the world. What about low level? Low level people, what do they do when it comes to the spiritual practice? Well, they go through the motions. It's very surface level with them. They don't particularly think about what it means. They just do it because that's what they've been brought up to do. That's what's expected of them. So they go through the motions without thinking about it too much. Then I also want to talk about how the different levels focus their thoughts on a typical day-to-day basis. The high-level person is putting the focus or the emphasis on the spiritual side of life, that there is a spiritual basis for everything that they do and think about and express. Mid-level people, what about them? Well, rather than focusing on the spirituality in life, they are often distracted by many different theories, many different philosophies. They're constantly reading one book after another, each one espousing a different theory. When they're done with one, there's another shiny object, another philosophy for them to take a look at. But then they never actually get down to using any one of the things that they have read. So many distractions for the mid-level person. The low-level person, well, the focus is not on philosophies or spirituality. The focus is on materialism, the material side of life. And then finally, when it comes to the journey of life, a high-level person is someone who can see the path clearly. This is where I am, that this path is where I am going. They see the path clearly. They know where they have to go. They know what they have to do. The mid-level person, exploring, looking for a way, try out different paths. Problem is, they often spend way too much time looking for different ways than to focus on a particular way. And then low-level person, lost and confused, disoriented, don't know which way to go. So the very last category of comparison between the three levels is what I would call how they conduct themselves. The high-level person understands the Tao, understands the principle that governs all things. So the higher level this person is, the better, deeper their understanding of the Tao. The mid-level students don't necessarily have that level of understanding. They know to follow rules. They don't exactly know the reasoning behind the rules, but they follow the rules. Low-level people can't even do that. They fail to follow rules, and therefore they resort to making excuses. All right, so once you see these different descriptions, I want everyone to take a moment to see where you belong. And hopefully it's at least just somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit to the left. That would be awesome. If not, it's just something that we need to work on together. Time flies when we're having fun, so we're actually at the end of our time together today. I want to bring everyone to the summary. And the summary, not a big surprise, is a re-emphasis on 上士. To become a higher level person, it is a worthy aspiration for all of us. So I have some suggestions on reaching for a high level. You may be doing some of these things already. If so, more power to you. Keep on doing it. And again, I'll use the Buddha as a symbol of the attainment, the aspiration to get to a higher level. So suggestion number one, I want you to take full advantage of your connection to the Tao. You see, the reason why I say that is because living in the West, for you to have found your way to the Tao, listening to me, in some cases, reading my books, That's actually unusual. That's actually not the majority of the people. They don't exactly flock to this Sunday meeting. This is rare. This is a connection that you have to the Tao. You have an affinity to the Tao, and it is something that I want you to cherish. Acknowledge it, treasure it, cherish it, take advantage of it. Go as far with the Tao as you can, because not everybody has the same connection that you do. Number two, I want to suggest, if you haven't already done so, that you can establish simple personal ritual as a gift for yourself. What do I mean by that? Well, for instance, in the morning, set up a routine to center yourself. Some people like morning meditation. I think that's very helpful. Some people like to maybe read a page from an inspirational book. But the idea is to center yourself and set the right tone for the entire day. And another suggestion is to set up a daily walk for relaxing the body and clearing the mind. Now, these are just suggestions. Whatever you do for yourself, the only suggestion, the higher level suggestion that I have is to establish some kind of personal ritual that you can stick to on a day-to-day basis. Number three, I want to caution everyone that when you encounter other people at a lower level, that you do not look upon them with scorn. You look upon them as resources that you care about, that you can learn a lot from. They provide plenty of counterexamples on what not to do. And lastly, and this is the compliment, when you have people who are at a higher level, people who live and learn from life at a higher level with greater wisdom, I would suggest that you seek them out to learn from them in terms of how they think about life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.